Welcome to another episode of Pound for Pound Boxing Report. I'm your host, Michael. Joining me this week, welcome to all those communities, digital news. Jacob Rivera from Jab Hook Boxing and Gus from Corruption to Boxing. What's going on, ladies and gents?
Good evening, everybody.
Hello.
For those new to Pound for Pound Boxing Report, Pound for Pound Boxing Report is a live YouTube show as well as podcast and blog discussing all things boxing. The motto is, when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When boxing is bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns boxing, we will talk about it. If you want to find all information Pound for Pound Boxing Report related, just go to the blog page, p4pboxingreport.wordpress.com is the link. Check the right of the blog page. You will find links to find us all over social media and all over the interwebs. Where you can find us on Facebook, on G+, on YouTube, where you can find the Tumblr page, where you can find us on via Twitter, where you can find the Pinterest board, where you can connect to our RSS feed, as well as find us on Stitcher Radio, Flipboard Magazine, SoundCloud, iTunes, the email address, which is p4pboxingrpt@gmail.com. And new, you can now find us on Player FM. Shout out to the homie Winnie Boxing. He suggested that I get on Player FM, and you will find me there. All past episodes, by the way, on Player FM. On Player FM, yeah. Let's get the show started. I want to recap what went down this weekend. One main fight I want to focus on, fight that took place Monday, as a matter of fact. In Russia, Sergey Kovalev defending his light heavyweight titles against Isaac Chilemba. I'm going to you first, Gus. Fight with the distance. Kovalev had some trouble, particularly in the first half of the fight, getting to Chilemba. The power proved the difference as Kovalev put him down in the 7th round, hurt him badly at the end, again in round 8, and had control throughout. But in the aftermath, a lot of people were disappointed and were surprised, put it that way, by the fight. Surprised that not only the fight with his distance, but also surprised that Kovalev had such difficulty getting to Chilemba, and how Chilemba may have exposed some flaws within Kovalev. He did a very good job of landing the jab, particularly in the first half of the fight, and even after he got knocked down, it hurt in round 7 and hurt in round 8. Your thoughts on the fight? The problems that Chilemba posed for Kovalev. Your breakdown, sir.
I mean, it's astonishing, Mike, that the amount of negativity that has arisen as a result of this fight. But rather than antagonizing Chilemba as much of all of the so-called analysts did prior to the fight, assuming that Kovalev was cherry-picking the opponent, I was actually telling a lot of people who were asking my advice that a 6-to-1 odds for Chilemba to survive on points is actually a very good bet. And it did not surprise me that he was able to last, because he's a very, very good fighter. Much underrated fighter who had 2 very, very good fights with Tony Bellew, who, as people may have forgotten, is the cruiserweight champion of the world, and arguably he had the better of their first fights that was adjudicated a draw. He's never been stopped. Very, very awkward, we know. The Taylor, the tape, he actually matched up pretty well as well. So he had all of the attributes to, to compete at the highest level. And let's face it, in his last fight, he was robbed against an Al Heyman fighter on a Showtime card for the right to fight an Al Heyman fighter, Adonis Stevenson. So it's a rhetorical question as to whether he would have got the decision. But in this fight, why Chilemba fundamentally did very well is because he has an extremely long reach, which I don't think BoxRec were correct in their assessment, saying that he only had a 73-inch reach.
It looked much longer watching it via stream, or if you watched it on tape delay on HBO.
Yeah, absolutely. And compared to sort of a Kovalev 72.5, and after 5 rounds, Mike, I had the fight 7 rounds to 5 for Kovalev, with the 7th round being a 10-8 because of the knockdown. so much closer. And after 5 rounds, I had Chilemba up 3-2, and particularly in the 4th round, I think he was landing so many clean punches. His jab was having tremendous success, and his overhand rights, which was knocking Kovalev's head back. So he had, he was having tremendous success with counter punches, particularly in the 4th round. I think it was his best round of the fight. Kovalev looked a little bit too tentative. He was operating very much in straight lines. There was clearly no angles to any of his work. And you mentioned something about a blueprint before. Now I made some notes as to what Chilemba was doing and what possibly would consider implement. What Chilemba was doing is that he was using his shoulder as a defense and sort of ducking underneath Kovalev's right hand, and that was working very well. Also, what he was doing, he was actually when Kovalev was actually coming in a straight line, not using his jab, when he was trying to use his left hook, Chilemba would take a half step back and then fire the overhand right over his left, and that was working very well. And the one punch that Chilemba was utilizing throughout the fight, and I think that's what contributed to Kovalev looking almost fatigued from the 7th round onwards, was his right hand to Kovalev's body. That was working from the 2nd round all the way to the 11th and the 12th, where he was landing that straight right hand to Kovalev's body. And I think that because Kovalev has never been used to that sort of punch hitting him, or even him being actually hit with so many clean punches.
And that's the thing.
First fight.
And that's the thing, Gus, and excuse me for interrupting. My thing about Kovalev is I always wondered how well he can take a shot to the body. That's one of my main concerns about him. And to your point, Chilemba, he landed some nice, effective right hands to the pit, to the side, and to the pit of the stomach.
Yeah, but the only problem is that Ward, although he's predominantly an inside fighter and a very, very proficient inside fighter, but he's not a body merchant. He doesn't work the body consistently well throughout the fights, despite not being extremely heavy-handed. He does mix the body and the head, but he targets the head a lot more. And on the inside, it's more about negating your opponent, as opposed to being an inside fighter and landing your punches. So, but that is something he can definitely look at. But I don't know how good he's going to be, because he's had problems with his right shoulder. I know he had surgery as well, so I don't know how effective his right hand is going to be constantly working the body. But I don't know, Mike. It hasn't deviated my assessment too much of Sergey. People are going to realize it's the first time he's back in Russia after sort of 5 years, whatever. And this guy is going to be a celebrity over there. We know he had a tremendous amount of media sort of engagements. He was out hunting with Nikolai Valuev and Ruslan Provodnikov, and they were out chasing bears and God knows what. So I'm sure he had massive amount of engagements, but I don't think he was under-conditioned. He's always in shape. So I think it was more due to Chilemba having a very, very good game plan, a very, very good chin, tough, awkwardness as well. And I think he could give anybody a difficult fight like that. So yeah, that's my little breakdown.
I see Daniel Carpio over the Instagram has joined us. Thanks for joining the show, Daniel. I'll go to you, Gail, and then you, Jacob, and finally Daniel. Your thoughts on Kovalev's win against Chilemba?
It was not the powerhouse, overwhelming event that a lot of people thought they'd see. And to follow on with what was just said, I do think he had a lot of distractions and obligations fighting at home. I think that some of it, if you can pardon my barking dog, is when he last fought in that building, as many of you are well aware, his opponent died of injuries suffered during the fight. Denis Simikov. And Kovalev has spoken very little about it. It affected him greatly at the time. He now, in retrospect, has admitted how much it affected him. And that had to be weighing on him. You know, there were a lot of fighters who never come back after hurting somebody. I don't think Mike Perez has ever been the same, you know, since injuries suffered to Abdul Salamov. So there was some of that. I also subscribe to a theory that was put out there by Michael Montero of Montero Unboxing, who many of you know, that Kovalev wasn't going to show all his cards because he knew Andre Ward was watching. And he played possum a little bit. He did just what he had to do. I think there's also some wisdom to that. He wanted to go some rounds. He wanted to stand in front of a guy that was in style as close as he could really get to Andre Ward for a while anyway. But he did what he had to do. He won. There was no question about the decision. I do think some of those cards were awfully wide. But, you know, under the circumstances and with everything else going on outside the ring, I think it was certainly a very serviceable performance.
Jacob and Daniel, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing I did hear just on something that you just mentioned, Gail, I heard that his purse or proceeds or the winnings of that fight went to the family of, I believe, the fighter that died.
That is correct. At the end of the fight, Kovalev announced that he would donate his entire purse to Simikov's family, which was a very gracious gesture and very fitting.
Yeah. And then just to speak on the fight, I mean, I think, you know, Gail and Gus summed it up pretty well. You know, Chilemba he's a tough guy, man. He's never been stopped. He's you know, he's not the biggest puncher in the world, but I think, you know, people aren't giving him enough credit for, you know, when these fighters get up to fight, you know, an undefeated fighter in the Lion's Den and they put on a good performance, I mean, there's got to be some credit there. But you know, I think it's very similar to the Chocolatito fight with Arroyo, where, you know, Arroyo was another fighter that didn't get stopped, and because they went the 12 rounds, all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, well, you know, he's not pound for pound anymore, and, you know, so, I mean, again, these guys that go out there and knock out their opponents most of the time, if they have a night where they don't do that, I think a lot of people are quick to jump to conclusions. I do think that there are validity to some of the things that Gail just spoke about, where if I was Kovalev, you know, why would I want to, like, blast him out? I want my opponents to think that, hey, yeah, you can beat me. There's a chance. I'm weak. Kind of very similar to the whole, you know, Gennady Golovkin thing, where he you know, what he says, you know, he lets it go a few more rounds, and then people start saying, oh, well, he lost that round or whatever, but, you know, he didn't, you know, lose a war or lose a battle, but didn't lose the war, kind of thing. So I'm not going to take too much away from this. I mean, I think Kova is trying to stay active, which is smart. He's fighting tough competition. And I think he will be ready come November for a very tough challenge in Andre Ward, and we still have to see how Andre Ward looks in this next fight, you know. But I'm excited for that fight. I mean, that's a #1 pound for pound fight.
Daniel, unmute your mic, please.
Well, the main thing you need to think about when it comes to this fight is all of what the points have been made up can be true at the same time. Yes, Kovalev did a lot of things in Russia. Like, this was his homecoming. Yes, he fought in an arena where the last person he fought there, by the profession, he killed. But at the end of the day, when I look at this particular fight, I do sense that Kovalev was a little gassed coming into it. He didn't train as hard as he wanted to. Well, understandably so, but at the same time, it's a style matchup. Chilemba's just awkward. And it's hard for somebody like Kovalev, who is really, he's, as much as he likes to come forward, he likes to do combination punching, and he wants to get you out the counter punch as well. it's hard for him to do that when somebody that has as defensive as Chilemba was. Remember, it took him up to the 8th round for him to finally get a knockdown. With this fight, I could definitely see what Michael Montero and Gail are saying, where Kovalev may be planting seeds, saying, "Look, Andre Ward, you can beat me," but at the same time, that'd be thinking if I'm John David Jackson. If I'm Kovalev, I wanted to blast him right away, because I want Andre Ward to say, "You can't beat me. This is what you signed up for." But like I said, we got a halfway decent fight out of it, and on a Monday night, nonetheless. The scores were a little wide, but we all knew Kovalev won, and he won pretty handily. The best thing probably about this fight is it evened out the odds in a lot of people's eyes. And I think I've heard some people say that Ward can actually not be seen until we see his next fight if he looks horrible. That's the favorite.
Let's open it up here. Gus mentioned in his commentary through Ward's name in there. I'm just going to open up for everybody here and the panel. After the fight, a lot of people were posing the question, given the way Kovalev looked, how would he fare against an Andre Ward? And even I was commenting that, look, the way he fought Monday evening, Ward would beat him, no doubt about it in my mind. I hear your point, Gail, as well as Michael Montero's point about maybe Kovalev just didn't bring it all. But my problem is, to Daniel's point, he was fighting at home for the first time in a long time, so he was wanting to impress and get a stoppage there, and he couldn't do it even after he hurt Chilemba in round 7 and 8. And to Gus's point, the issue about Kovalev fighting in a straight line, he always does that. He's always done it. But he faced a guy in Chilemba here who, for the first time, really took advantage of the fact that he fought in a straight line and had Kovalev a little bit perplexed, a little bit confused early on. Again, as I stated before, how to get to him. You can't put everything in this performance by Kovalev and how he would do against Ward, but you can put some stock into it. I know Ward said he didn't watch the fight, but I'm sure once he and his trainer sees the film, they would jot some things in their head and some things that they could take advantage of, even if Kovalev didn't quote unquote bring his A game in there against Chilemba. So I'm gonna open up here, and anybody can chime in the aftermath and the thoughts on a possible fight with Ward coming up later on this year. Your thoughts on that?
One thing though is I want to point out is that in Andre Ward's last fight, although he did look good, he did get hit a lot, and Ward isn't Chilemba. I mean, I have to believe that John David Jackson and Kovalev are going to come up with a different game plan and try to prove that they are the #1 pound-for-pound fighter. And if Kovalev can land the punches that Sullivan Barrera are landing, then I think it could be a different fight. So I mean, where Kovalev has shown maybe some chinks in the armor, I think Ward has also shown similar things.
And let me clarify something I said earlier about Kovalev playing Russian possum. It's a theory. It's a theory. I agree with the group. I think I agree with the group overall that when Kovalev got Chilemba in trouble in the 7th, he should have tried to close the show. He couldn't do it. That says more probably about Chilemba. He's a tough guy. He's smart.
Fair point. Fair point.
He held when he needed to. And if that had happened at the beginning of the round, we wouldn't be talking about this because it would have been a 7th round stoppage. But it was done in the last minute, so Chilemba knows enough to keep himself on his feet and, waste 10 seconds talking to the referee, which he did, and spend another 10 holding, which he did, and he recovers extremely well. So after that, You know, he was pretty good coming out for the 8th round, and he managed to make it all the way through the fight. You know, but by that punching power, Kovalev showed what he's got in the tank. Those two will be ready in November. Now, we still need to see what Ward looks like here in a couple of weeks. And at this point of his career also, Ward seems to be a little bit physically fragile. You know, he has suffered injuries. He's had postponements. I'm just saying that if you're planning to go to the fight on November 19th, I would make sure your hotel room is refundable. That's all I'm saying.
Gus, Daniel?
I wanted to say something that where Jacob said, he mentioned, like, yeah, something that's true, that in the fight with Solomon Barrera, Ward got hit. I tend to give Ward a pass, though, because he didn't really fight in a long time. So he was still shaking off a little bit of the rust. He's going to do the same thing in a couple of weeks. I don't think, because honestly, I don't think the Andre Ward that let himself be hit by those punches of Solomon Barrera is going to be the same Andre Ward that's going to show up against Sergey Kovalev. He's probably going to be a little more fine-tuned, but to Gail's point, like I said, that November date, it looks enticing, but I wouldn't put it past Ward to say I need one more tune-up fight. Because Andre Ward's reputation is he will fight when he himself feels perfectly ready to fight.
My problem is with that, Daniel, is he's already signed the contract. And the powers that be are not going to let him get away with it. Not this time.
I think it would also show a mental deficiency in the sense that you're giving more power to Kovalev by saying, "Oh, I need one more fight. I need one more fight." If that's the excuse. I mean, then it's kind of like almost a fear factor that I'm not ready. I'm claiming to be the best fighter in the world. I get my a couple tune-up fights, and now I need one more.
And I'm not saying that because I think he's going to beg more time. I'm saying, he's well over 30 at this point, and some guys are young 30-year-olds and some guys aren't, and he just seems to be a little bit physically fragile. Stuff happens to him. He has a knee injury, he hurts his hand, he has stuff go on. So I think that bears watching. I don't think it's so much game playing as he has some physical issues and needs to deal with them.
If you're around, Gus, unmute your mic and give some commentary on this.
Okay, 3 quick points, Mike. Number one, I agree with what Cafe Duva stated regarding Kovalev in that the toughest fight is the fight before the big fight. So I don't hold his performance too bad in that mind. Number two, the frustrating thing, Mike, is that Adonis Stevenson has a 77-inch reach, and he's got power as well, which Chilemba didn't have. And I think stylistically, he could have done a hell of a lot more damage, and I really think he has the tools to actually beat him, but that fight's never going to happen. But it's the massive frustration. And the third one is that Andre Ward, when he's hit and hurt, as he was with the Darnell Boone fight, he effectively went into a shell for like 3-4 rounds. And with a potential fight with Kovalev, I think Kovalev can... He may be frustrated for a certain, maybe 3-4 rounds in this fight, but eventually he will get to him, and I think his power will definitely cause some damage to Ward. And I don't really know how well Ward is going to react to that, because from what I've saw in the past, he doesn't react too well. So it's still a 50-50 for me, but I'm slightly tipped more towards Kovalev though.
Indeed. Any final words before we move on?
I wanted to point out something when, like I said, this is one of the reasons I say that Andre Ward is very, very particular about the way he does things. Like that November fight, remember, he was supposed to be on the undercard for the Canelo Cotto fight. He literally, admitted, 3 or 4 months later, he could have fought. He just did not feel right, he said. And said, I will not fight until I am 100% ready. If he feels a slight discomfort, and I said to Gail's point, he may be a little bit physically fragile at this point. There's things that can push the fight. It may not just be out of fear. It's just the way he is.
Yeah, this was a knee injury in sparring. I know his sparring partner, he's the Egyptian-born light heavyweight Ahmed El-Biali, who is out of Miami, who's now living in Vegas, and it happened when they were sparring. And El-Biali's a big, sort of press-forward Kovalev kind of guy. And, maybe Andre had a twinge in his knee, nothing serious, but perhaps he got pressed to the point he was a little concerned and said, well, I got a knee injury. I do have to add this, too. I was watching the feed of the fight from Match TV, which is the Russian network that was carrying it, so I'm hearing Russian commentators. And no, I do not speak Russian, but more than once I heard clear as a bell the Russian commentators refer to Adonis Chickenson. Hilarious.
Yep.
Wow. Wow.
So apparently there's no translation for Adonis Chickenson in Russian. They just use the English.
Wow. Let's move. Yeah, let's move on. Go ahead. Jacob.
I was just saying one more thing. I think that's Andre Ward. Or at least what I hear from a lot of boxers is that you're never going to be 100%. So if Andre Ward is waiting for him to be 100%, especially at this point in his career, I think it's a dangerous waiting game. But I mean, all these factors is what makes this fight the must-see fight of this year. If it goes off, it's so intriguing. It's the essence of boxing, where you have two people that are very skilled, going up against each other for all the marbles, so to speak, and nobody, I don't think anybody can say with 100% certainty that, I think, this guy's going to win for sure, and how, and that's what makes it so fun and intriguing.
Absolutely. November 19th is the date. Andre Ward has a tune-up fight next month, but should he succeed in that, to your point, Jacob, is the most exciting fight, the most important fight of the that's the most important fight of the second half of 2016. The fight we're all looking forward to. We have much more commentary and a much more expansive breakdown as the fight gets closer. Let's get to the news this week. Big news happened after the show. The day after we taped this last week's episode, news broke, surprising the hell out of everybody, that Kell Brook was supposed to fight Vargas, back and forth about that. Then all of a sudden, boom, you hear he's going to fight Triple G September 10th at the O2 in the UK. I'm still perplexed at this. I'm still surprised. I still haven't come to a real thought on this. I'm going to go to you, Gail. Your level of surprise when you heard this news. Kell Brook moving up 2 weights to fight Triple G. Are you disappointed in Triple G that he's fighting this fight, particularly in the aftermath of Canelo fighting Khan? Your thoughts on all of this?
I am not. I was surprised as everybody. I mean, who thought this one coming? The more I've looked at it, the more I like it. And I purposely waited a few days to let my thought process settle and hear from the various players before I wrote about it. I didn't want to write about it that day until we all had sorted out our thinking a little bit. And to hear how it came about, to listen to Eddie Hearn talk about it, and Tom Loeffler talk about it, and Brook corroborating Hearn's account of how it all went down, it's a very different situation. It's too simple to compare it to Canelo and Khan. For one thing, Canelo went after Khan for the fight. In this case, Brook and Hearn offered themselves to Golovkin's camp. He wasn't chasing them. They offered themselves up freely. Very different story. Brook is having a very hard time making the welterweight limit. He admits he's probably a junior middleweight, and he walks around about the same size Golovkin does. So it's a different story than a guy like Khan, who's a small welterweight, who honestly could probably still make 140. He might not enjoy the process very much, but I'm sure he could. Completely different as to how it came about. And honestly, I think Hearn is as crazy as a fox. It's brilliant. He was having trouble with getting the match made between Golovkin and Chris Eubank Jr., mainly because of his difficulty dealing with Eubank Jr.'s father, Chris Eubank Sr., who had been making all sorts of demands on what they wanted control over, everything from who was going to commentate on the fight, ringside, to ticket sales, to, I don't know, the color of the carpet in the dressing room. Who the hell knows? And Hearn had it, just had it with him up to here, and was in the midst also at the same time of negotiating the Kell Brook versus Jesse Vargas bout, having not quite as hard a time, but also a hard time dealing with the Vargas camp, and in his frustration says, to hear him tell it to Brook, damn, you should just fight Triple G. I wish you were a middleweight, would you fight him? He said, I will fight him. Yeah. You serious? Yeah, I'm serious. Fight was made. The fight was made so fast. Both sides agreed so quickly. It fell into place. The guy who should probably be disappointed the most is Jesse Vargas, who once again, left without a dance partner. That does seem to happen to him. But if anybody is angry about this, turn your anger on the Eubanks camp. That fight was made. It was signed on the K2 Golovkin side. It was derailed because of the Eubanks camp. So Kell Brook stepped in, and he is in an ideal position. The fight is going to be at middleweight for Golovkin's belts. Brook is not going to put up his welterweight belts. Win or lose, he still is a welterweight champion. If he wins, it's the biggest thing to hit boxing in many years. If he doesn't, everyone has already given him tremendous respect for stepping up to do this. If he even makes a decent showing, he's going to come out a winner in this. People are excited. Tickets have sold like crazy. Once again, we're all talking about it. This is the kind of buzz that is good for boxing. And I like the fight.
I'm going to go to you, Gus. Gail mentioned Chris Eubank Jr. That's the backdrop, really, of this fight. The fact that there were negotiations happening for a Golovkin Eubank Jr. fight around the same time, September, October. And according to her and Eubanks, they were making too many demands. I don't know. I understand Eubanks' position, the son as well as the father, because from my perspective, from Eubanks Sr., yes, he was being difficult, but at the same time, for him, it's about control. We talked about this last week, post-show. The comparison is music, in the fact that Eubank, they want control in the way that an artist, a musical artist, wants control of their masters, and that's why they had this deal here, this deal there. That's why they was being so difficult. So I can understand that, but it still makes them look bad to the public. Talk about that aspect and how it really played a major role in this fight with Brook being made.
Yeah, with this particular issue now, a lot of people have cast a lot of antagonism certainly on Chris Eubank Sr., who appears to be facilitating the negotiations on behalf of his son. Now, let's look at it from the perspective of Chris and his son. Now, Chris Eubank Sr. was involved in the fight that regrettably ended in a serious injury to one of his opponents in Michael Watson, who, as we all know, suffered, serious sort of cerebral injuries, and hence sort of irreversible in that sense that he's still suffering was unable to fight subsequently after, and financially he's not in a in a sort of a comfortable position. And we saw recently with Chris Eubank Jr. as well in the fight with Nick Blackwell, and the regrettable problems that he suffered post-fight as well, and the fact that his boxing career is over now, and hence he was coming towards the peak of his career, and hence he's now denied the opportunity to sort of sustain himself and his family. So there is a great deal of uncertainty how he will sustain his long-term future as well. We don't know the insurance aspects with the boxers, so I can't really comment on that. So I do have some sympathy with fighters who would try and invoke the sort of intellectual property rights to own the rights of their fights that they can subsequently license. If you look at even Gerald McLennan when he fought Nigel Benn, who owns the rights to the fights? Frank Warren does.
Right.
And let's look at Gerald McLennan. He's been looked after by his sister all the way through. I know Roy Jones Jr. was quite supportive even financially to them early on, but the financial support has dried up, and his sister's been pledging for sort of financial contributions, etc. So if it's a father who's trying to hedge against the possibilities of sort of life-threatening injuries or even fatalities or whatever else, then yes, I have a certain sympathy of that. But those negotiations, they wouldn't necessarily transpire during the negotiations of a fight. That is a separate agreement, and I've worked in contracts, Mike, for 20 years with procurement managers for various banks around the world, etc. So I do have an understanding of this. Now you wouldn't necessarily negotiate. You would, if you have a promoter, then you would negotiate that with the promoter separately, and that promotion and that contract would take effect for any future fight. But then the contract, then sometimes it would have to be a tripartite agreement if the fight is being shown on another television network, because that aspect, we know that all promoters and television networks, they I wouldn't say they try and hide that within their sort of terms and conditions, but that is not something they negotiate openly.
Yeah, I was going to say they don't go out there and make it public either, though.
Yeah, absolutely, because we all know how much money, we all know the reruns that they do on ESPN and HBO and Sky and God knows how many other television channels and worldwide networks around the world. So it's a massive source for revenue, because every time they show the fight, they have to pay sort of licensing fees. So, and we know fights are being sort of shown, 50, 60, 70, God knows how many years. So it is a massive long-term sort of revenue stream. So it is understandable, but the method of the negotiations, I do have a concern with. And given that the same deal was offered to sort of Anthony Joshua and sort of Carl Froch, so almost a sort of a homogeneous contract, which seemed reasonable, especially to a guy like Chris Eubank, who, let's face it, he doesn't have the same sort of level of marketability, and he's not a champion. He's an up and coming fighter. So whether he's in the position to command, such a demand at the moment does seem a little bit ludicrous, especially given that he's now, thrown away a £3 or £4 million purse, which would have been massively lucrative to somebody with such a tender age and with such a very moderate record at best, and a record, let's face it, that's been regressing. He had one big fight and he lost that fight against Billy Joe, and his subsequent opponents, Spike O'Sullivan and Nick Blackwell and Tom Doran, that shows a regression to me. So yeah, it's an interesting one.
And the only reason I bring this up, Gus, because you mentioned fights and who has the rights to fights and whatnot. Notice you will see Ali Frazier 2 all over the place. You will see Ali Frazier 3 all over the place. Notice the fight you don't see? Ali Frazier 1.
One, yeah.
That has to do with rights and who owns the fight. I mean, yeah, you can find it here. You'll find it on YouTube and whatnot, but you're not going to find it on television.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's why I have to put that out there, and why you will use the word sympathy, and I'll use that word in this case again. That's why I have some sympathy with the Eubanks and what they're trying to do. I'll go to you, Daniel and Jacob. Your thoughts on all this? The fight itself, and as well as the backstory here with the fight not being made with between Triple G and Eubank, and the fight not being made with Vargas and Brook.
In terms of the fight itself, I've had to actually try to think about it, because I did ask a few people, should this, and I actually asked it on Monday when I was with Joe, should this be treated like Canelo Khan? Because on paper, and it is still, in this case, the consensus middleweight champion of the world fighting somebody whose most recent campaign is at welterweight. If you're going to take it paper face value, you have to treat those equally. But I know there's a lot of circumstances involved in this. When it comes to the fight, yeah, I got to give respect to Brook. He's stepping up against a fighter that not a lot of people want to face. And he's going to get a good payday of it. The backstory of it is what actually makes this fight a lot more interesting. And one of the things I mentioned rights to fights, like right now on Show Extreme, they're showing Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. versus Pernell Whitaker. I wonder who owns the rights to that fight now. But when it comes to this effect, I understand what Chris Eubank Sr. was doing. I respect it. I respect trying to get as much money as you can, as much of your property rights as you can for your son, to make sure that your son, when he's off and retired, and God forbid something bad happens to him, he's well taken care of. The problem, unfortunately, is you're not doing it in a position of strength. There's only so much that you can do when, A, you're technically the B side of the fight, and 2, you're not the one paying for it. K2's the one paying for this. So, at the end of the day, I can see why Eddie Hearn was frustrated now. Gus, I think you mentioned, I think a little bit ago, I forgot in the hangout, that you said that you thought this was planned for months. That pretty much Eubanks was just used as a fiddle to get this fight done.
Yeah.
I could see that. Because, unfortunately, Chris Eubank Sr. is notoriously hard to deal with when it comes to negotiating. It got to the point where his longtime rival Nigel Benn even joked about it on Twitter. Said that's why dads should stay out of the careers of their sons, because he did cost Chris Eubanks Jr. a pretty nice payday. And granted, yeah, this also fell in line with the fact that Kell Brook was not really happy with the money he was being paid for the Jesse Vargas fight.
Exactly.
So it was just basically two seemingly different situations that could be fixed by merging them together. But the question I'm always going to raise is, should this still be treated as Canelo Khan? I understand the circumstances, but it's still at the same time, like I talked about it, I talked about it on Sunday, Triple G could have just tried to do a fight at 168 and try to see if he can make the money there, because optics-wise, unfortunately, doesn't matter that Kell Brook, that, like I said, Kell Brook was probably not going to be a welterweight again. Optics-wise, it just looks like you criticize Canelo for fighting a welterweight, yet here you are doing the exact same thing.
Right. That's why a few weeks ago when we were talking about Triple G, I made the argument that he could have went up and fought Zero Ramirez and still tried to seek a fight with Canelo Alvarez. Doing this to a lot of people, to your point, Daniel, makes it seem on the surface it's the same. Make it look like the same thing that Canelo did with Amir Khan. Context may be different, of course, and it is different. But to a lot of people, people don't look at context. They just look at the surface, and it's like, what's the difference here?
Well, that's like saying somebody who doesn't read the fine print, on a contract, shouldn't have to be beholden to it. There is always context, and there is always detail, and it's a completely different situation. Canelo went looking for Khan. Canelo is the one avoiding fighting even in the weight class itself. It was at Canelo weight, as we all know, 155, which is ridiculous. Golovkin didn't go looking for Brook. Brook came to him. Brook laid his cards on the table and said, "What do you think?" And the money is right. The tickets sold like crazy. When you've got the money to make the fight, great. Golovkin's team has been very consistent about saying one thing. He is not moving up to super middleweight until he has all the belts. And that's on Canelo. Well, I think he's gonna. I think Saunders is gonna keep running from him. Who knows what Eubank Jr. will do? Jacob is behind the Heyman line, so that's a tough one. Although I think Jacob himself is willing, and good for him. But it's a promoter business issue there. So what's he supposed to do? What the hell is Golovkin supposed to do? Sit on his ass? No.
That's the whole thing, Gail. Like, we understand the context.
Well, and then it's our job to educate people as to why they're not the same thing. That's our job.
They gave Brook no concessions. Brook wanted the fight at 157.
Yeah,
That's
he agreed.
But Gennady Golovkin openly came out and said that he has concerns that Brook is too small. He explicitly said it's too small.
Then why say at the same time this is still the toughest fight for you?
Because he's trying to sell the fight.
That's the whole point. Don't say things that are contradictory. But the whole point is like what Gail pointed out. We have to be the ones that have to wade out of this because unfortunately, to the average person that doesn't pay attention much to the details of this and just sees IBF middleweight champion Gennady Golovkin fighting IBF welterweight champion Kell Brook, there's a disparity there, unfortunately. And for a lot of people, and especially around the timetable they're doing it, the fight's less than 2 months away. It's not enough time, unfortunately, for a lot of people to really understand the context. And let's not forget either, I think the IBF is pretty strict when it comes to the rules about fighters fighting for different belts and different weight classes. So I mentioned before, like I think last week or a couple weeks ago, that I thought Errol Spence versus Bundu was going to be for the vacant IBF welterweight championship because honestly I didn't think Kell Brook could make the weight anymore. That may just be the case, but this is not because Kell Brook can't make the weight, just because of the ambition.
And he is saying he has a very difficult time making the weight. There is also going to be a rehydration clause. They cannot go up more than 10 pounds within 24 hours. So I like that protection. I mean, I would really love to go to day of the fight weigh-ins. We've talked about that before here on the show. That's never going to happen in my dreams. So rehydration clause is the second best thing that can be done, and that is in place for this fight.
Let's get Jacob into this because we hadn't heard his thoughts on all those. I'll meet you, Mike, Jacob.
Yeah, I'm on. Yeah, first of all, I want to tell Gail that her article, great article. Although I disagree, but I respect. Gail's a very smart lady and she knows her stuff. So I just want to give her props. And
I'm going to say the same about Jacob because we both wrote on opposite sides of this issue this week, and depending on where you come down, they're both well-reasoned arguments. We just came to different conclusions.
Well, I appreciate that, Gil. I mean, it means a lot coming from you. But yeah, I mean, I don't like this fight at all. I do have one question for the panel, though. What fight was more surprising that got made, Canelo Khan or Brook Triple G?
Brook Triple G didn't surprise me at all.
It would be Canelo Khan because Brook actually, when Canelo Khan was made, Brook threw the idea of fighting Triple G before.
Exactly.
Yeah, I have to say Canelo Khan, and especially because at the level Khan is fighting, you know, in his weight division to this point, you know, Brook is the one that's been fighting more at Triple G's level. Khan's had some beatdowns.
Brook Golovkin was more surprising. Canelo Khan was more annoying because you saw it a mile away. You didn't like it. You were pissed off about it. You raised hell about it, and the fight happened anyway.
Well, I'm going to say I'm also on the Khan Canelo, like as far as the surprise, but I just wanted to get, you know, the panel's consensus. But reasons why I don't like this fight. My main reason, to me, for Golovkin, this is a lose-lose fight. Just the same way I was saying Canelo was a lose-lose fight for Khan, against Khan. The reason I say that is that if Triple G beats Brook, he beat a smaller, you know, he beat on a littler guy, right, a welterweight. If he loses, then he got beat by a welterweight. Granted, a very good one, but he got beat by a welterweight, and that mystique of him being the baddest man on the planet, that is gone. That's out the window, and you can better believe that Canelo's team will be all over that, saying, "Oh, see, we would have, you know, beat his ass anyway." Second thing, I'll beat this till you know, I'm blue in the face. We have classes for a reason. We have weight classes for a reason. I don't like fighters moving around in weight classes. I don't like catch weights, especially for championship fights. If you're going to fight at this weight, prove yourself at that weight, win the belts at that weight, and then if you want to move on, move on. I don't like when people get to cut in line for other, you know, people that are putting their time into that weight class, and then just because you're a name or just because, you know, you're undefeated or whatever, you bring money, you automatically get the super fight. So I pose the question is, are we boxing turning more to super fight or who's the best in their class? And so that's one of my big problems with it. You know, hats off to Brook. I mean, he's been trying to get a big money fight. And in essence, Canelo and Khan are the two fighters that just fought each other, are the fighters that should have been fighting these fighters. We should have seen Amir Khan fighting Brook in the UK. That would have been a huge fight. And we should have seen Canelo fighting Triple G in September. That would have been a huge fight, no matter where that was at. So, I mean, there's disappointment there in that aspect because those were the two fights I want to see. I wasn't really calling out for a Brook Triple G match. I mean, I think, you know, from a Triple G standpoint of him saying, I want all the belts and I'm fighting at 160 and I don't want to move up until I have all the belts. I wish they would be a little bit more honest and just say, hey, we want big money fights, and that's why we did this. You know, Triple G has been on record of saying that Brook is, you know, he doesn't think that Brook, that fight would be, you know, a competitive, I guess, a good fight in the sense that he's too small. He said he would do it anyway in that same interview, but, you know, he just doesn't think that would be the right fight, and this was, you know, a few years back. But I also think that the Eubank thing, even though he was being difficult in the negotiations, I think that fight would have eventually got made. And, you know, Triple G going to the UK for the first time, I think that fight would have sold just fine. I don't think that they needed anything. I think, if anything, Brook needed Triple G more than Triple G needed Brook because from what I was hearing, the Brook fight with Vargas, there wasn't a lot of, you know, excitement about that in general. But, you know, Jesse Vargas, you know, I'm sure we'll talk about it later. I don't know, he could be in line to be fighting Pacquiao here. You know, they're both with Top Rank, and, you know, there's, you know, some rumblings there. But again, those are the reasons that I don't like the fight. Will I watch it? Of course, I'm gonna watch it. I'm a boxing fan, but I don't like it.
Let's move on. You mentioned Manny Pacquiao, and I'll go right back to you, Jacob. It looks like Manny Pacquiao is going to fight come back to the ring after all. We don't know the opponent yet. The fight is scheduled, I think either for late October, early November. Your thoughts on this? I'll just say right here quickly that we talked about this a little bit last week, and when I heard this news come down, for me, it says that Arum, he finally got to Pacquiao. Because I truly believe Pacquiao, he doesn't really want to fight. Because initially when asked about it, he said no. I just think he's overall tired of the BS. But, like I said before, Arum got to him, got in his mind, and just said, let's do one more for me, because I hear the rumblings about Manny Pacquiao is maybe in need of some cash. But at the same time, Arum needs him too, because he's still, Pacquiao is still Arum's cash cow. And that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, the one word, I mean, when they said Pacquiao's coming back, I was like, shocker, right? You know, like we all knew that was going to happen, just like we know Mayweather's coming back. But I mean, I don't know. To me, it's like a unicorn, right? These boxers that walk away, you know, with a win and retire and, you know, go off into the sunset, it's like a unicorn. You'll rarely see one. It rarely happens. And it you know, time and time again, you know, who was the Rios, you know, he retired, he came back. You know, Mayweather's done it before. You know, Roy Jones is still fighting. I mean, these guys can't stop. They you know, they're their own worst enemy, in the sense that, you know, they'll get their brains beat in until, you know, finally they can't, you know, legally fight anymore. Although, you know, Holyfield still stuck around for longer than he, you know, probably should have been sanctioned for. But I do think, you know, I don't think Danny Garcia is going to fight him because of the Heyman thing, even though they settled their lawsuit. I hope to God, I don't think they would do this. I hope that we don't see another Bradley fight. I don't think Juan Manuel Marquez is going to fight him. I think he's satisfied with that knockout victory, and he's gonna hold that over him forever. He's not going to give him that chance again. So I mean, I think there's some interesting matchups that can be made, but I don't really want to see him back. I know people are saying the winner of Crawford Postol, which I'm sure we'll talk about in future shows.
He better stay away from both guys, as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, I think that's a dangerous fight, and then Postol's, you know, trained by Freddie Roach, so I mean, I don't know that fight would even happen. But I don't know. Jesse Vargas seems to be the front runner in my mind, because they're both with Top Rank. Jesse Vargas just you know got ditched on this fight with Brook. He has a belt. I don't think he's a dangerous puncher. I know he's you know what he did to Ali and then the whole thing in the last round of Bradley, but I still don't think he's a dangerous puncher. And so for Pacquiao, I think that would be, you know, a credible opponent with a belt that he can get, and, you know, would satisfy that kind of appetite.
Your thoughts on all this? I'll start with you, Gail, and you comment as well. Daniel and Gus, your thoughts on this comeback from Pacquiao?
I didn't believe it when he said it in the press conference after his fight with Bradley. He didn't believe it. No one in the room believed it. He started the press conference by saying, "Yes, I am retired. Yes, I am retired." And as the questions kept coming, then it became, "Well, I promised my family I'd retire, and I need to honor that." And then it became, "Well, you know, I'll retire, and, you know, maybe I'll like it, but, you know, we'll see. Maybe I won't like it." I mean, come on. You know, what are we all kidding ourselves for? You know, least of all, Manny. Arum does need him, you know, out there still to be relevant. Tonight, I'm seeing quotes from Arum. Actually, he's been quoted in Papers in Manila, saying that the three possible opponents are Crawford, Vargas, or Danny Garcia. Yeah, Pacquiao should go nowhere near Terrence Crawford. And really, where Top Rank's concerned, that would be a very bad idea. I do think Jesse Vargas would be the easiest opponent, but I'm intrigued by Danny Garcia. And honestly, although he had a very, very good performance in his last fight, he has weaknesses, and I think Manny could beat him. So we'll see what happens. And they're still talking over venues, and I think this is really interesting. The venues, pretty much all of the major venues in Vegas are in play at this point. Mandalay Bay, which is the smallest of the list, MGM Grand, the new T-Mobile Arena, and they have even talked to the Thomas and Mack Center. So they've got plenty of options ranging in size from 12,000 seats to 20,000 seats. So Aram says all he needs to do is finalize the opponent, the venue, and the dates are either October 29th or November 5th.
Daniel and Gus?
Well, like I said, we all knew this was coming. Nobody.
I don't think we all knew it was coming this fast. Is the only surprise.
No, come on, yeah, we all knew. We all knew it was going to happen this year.
Yeah, but didn't you think he'd be? It's sort of like, it's almost like the unwritten rule of waiting a year after somebody dies to go out on a date or something. Could he? You think he would have waited a year?
No.
And, nah.
No, the thing about it is, I can understand where you're coming from on that rule, but then at the same time, with the way that Manny Pacquiao takes care of people in the Philippines, he has no choice. He's not gonna be able to take care of as large of an entourage as he has on a salary that's equal to $9,000 a year, which is the salary of a Filipino senator. He was gonna come back at this point this year. The opponent's line doesn't surprise me at all. Two top-ranked guys, and a guy that everybody knows he's not going to get, but he has to throw a name out there because Aram can't just say he's going to do everything in-house. But at the end of the day, I'm of the opposite thinking I think of you and Jacob. I think Aram wants Crawford because he wants that passing to the torch fight. He doesn't want Manny riding around in the Philippines saying, I won. There's nobody that beat me. Aram never found anybody that could beat me other than Floyd. And so with Crawford, especially if he looks good against Postal, he's going to be his chance. Crawford come in there, and there's a good chance that Crawford might beat him because he has a meanness in that kid.
Oh, I think Crawford absolutely would beat him. I don't think Manny should go anywhere near him.
Yeah, if your Manny's team don't do it, like if your Aram's team, that's the fight you're going to push. You're going to push.
I'll tell you who's going to have a say-so, though, is Freddie Roach. And, let's see what happens here in a week between Crawford and Postal. I think we'll know a whole lot more after that. And I think Aram is going to stall until he sees that fight to make the decision.
Go ahead, Daniel.
No, that's it. But can you think of this game when it comes down to it? Freddie Roach has a blind spot, unfortunately, and that's Manny. He tends to believe that nobody can beat Manny, no matter what. So he might throw a blind spot, especially if Crawford looks good against Paul. He might throw a blind spot. Oh, Manny will beat him. He's my greatest pupil, so he'll definitely beat him.
I don't think it's so much a blind spot as. I'll tell you, at the news conference, post-Pac Bradley 3, all the questions were going to Manny about retirement. And someone threw a question Freddie's way and said, well, what about you, Freddie? Are you thinking about retiring? And his answer was, he said it in a joking way. He did have a smile on his face, but it was very telling to me. And he said, oh, no, I'm never going to retire because I have nothing else to do. I have nothing else. Manny's a politician. He's got a family. Boxing's all Freddie does. And, Freddie is looking at Manny saying, you're really the last big star in my stable. Who else is there right now? Miguel Cotto, his career is almost over. Postal, we'll see how he does. And I think Postal is going to give Crawford some trouble. But he isn't a household name like Manny either. So Freddie's in a real interesting place where he's got to develop some more talent and find his next Manny, and he doesn't really have one right now.
Let's get Gus into this discussion. Your thoughts on all this, Gus?
Mike, I'm actually disappointed with Pacquiao's decision, but corruption in boxing, he's never surprised with the antics of these fighters. I know this game too well, but you know, Mike, Manny Pacquiao is the greatest fighter and the most exciting fighter in all of boxing in the last 15 years. He is on my all-time list ahead of Floyd Mayweather, even though he lost against him, because he achieved far more, and he was always an exciting fighter that exemplified the sweet science. I thought it was a fitting time for somebody who had conquered the sport and won titles in sort of 8 divisions, the first guy to do so. But Bob Arum has always said that there's a potential sort of 2 more fights and 40 million pounds on the table for him. So it doesn't surprise me. Now, when we're talking about sort of potential opponents now, although the Terence Crawford fight is the most intriguing of all of the fights, I don't agree with the fight because it is Bob Arum's responsibility to develop Terence Crawford. It is not Manny Pacquiao's jurisdiction for him to be a sacrificial lamb or somebody to pass the torch for an unstable fighter. No, I don't agree with that at all. That is Bob Arum's duty and responsibilities to promote him and make him a pay-per-view star, because he's an American fighter and he's an extremely talented fighter. So and he's an exciting fighter as well. So that it should not be too easy to develop him into the next regular pay-per-view star for Top Rank. So I don't agree with that. Plus, he would be moving up another weight as well. So to me, that is that's nonsense. Allow him to operate at light welter if he wants. Now, Jesse Vargas, I can't see that, because Jesse Vargas has never had a purse more than $1 million. Now, if Manny Pacquiao has a minimum 20 million on the table, are you telling me Vargas is going to accept $1 million? I don't see the sort of imposition, the sort of imbalance in purses there. So I can't see that fight. There's only 2 fights that I think Manny Pacquiao wants and he desires. The Adrian Broner fight financially would be very, very lucrative, but it's the Floyd Mayweather fight, and something is telling me that this 100-pound hush money that Bob Arum has received from Al Heyman, or whatever negotiating rights for that fight, that is the fight he wants. He wants to rectify, what transpired before, and I certainly want to see that fight as well. So I'm hoping it's that fight, but maybe I'm a little bit too optimistic.
Yeah, I'll just say right now, I don't want to see that fight.
I do.
You speak for me.
I do.
Hey Daniel, do you predict that's a fight though still, right?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Because of the reason that Gus mentioned, unfortunately.
Yep.
It's the one fight that you can actually make where Al Heyman and Bob Arum can actually get along with.
Yeah.
Because think about think about this also when you think they settled this lawsuit. Have we seen a major fight yet between a top-ranked guy and a Heyman guy yet? Because we were supposed to be thinking like Bradley versus Thurman or Bradley versus Porter in that sense, but we're not seeing that. Hell, we're going to see Brandon Rails probably in the PBC soon because he's now free of Top Rank. But that's the main thing about it when it comes to this situation. Like Adrian Broner, yeah, I think his name just thrown out there. I don't honestly think that Bob Arum was seriously negotiated.
And plus, from what I hear, Broner has outpriced himself for a fight with Pacquiao.
He wants $1 billion.
But this is the thing, though. This is
How much does he want?
Well, oh no, you're about to hear how much he wants. This is the reason why Arum actually really didn't negotiate this fight. Arum in one day said Broner wanted $6 million.
Oh, get out of here.
And then the very next day, he said, no, Broner wanted as much as Pacquiao. That tells me...
Yeah, because, Mr. Broner has a whole lot of child support to pay to all those baby mamas.
You can just go
It's
back
bowling
to
money.
guys
It's
that
bowling
bowling
money.
guys.
He needs it for bowling.
Yeah, he needs dough, all right. He needs dough. About billions.
Yeah.
About $1 billion is what he owes.
Yep, but that's the thing. If you're going to say on 2 different days an amount that's $14 million in difference, it doesn't tell me you never really negotiated the fight. Now, the most likely fight, if we're going to throw the 3 names that Arum threw out there, would probably be Jesse Vargas, because the WBO belt seems to always to gravitate itself back to Manny, some way or another. And this is just another way to gravitate it back to Manny. It really doesn't mean anything, because at the end of the day, we're probably gonna. I think it most likely is gonna be next year, because Floyd's gonna want that Cinco de Mayo date. He's not gonna want to fight in the end of October, middle of November, right as, like, say, his other favorite sport, the NBA's getting their season going. So that one's gonna look interesting. But if I'm Arum, I'm pushing him. As I said, I'm secretly pushing him to Crawford, because in business-wise, that's what I need.
I'm gonna throw one more fighter out there that I think would be an interesting challenge for Manny, and that's Sean Porter.
That one's interesting in the sense that they're both former sparring partners, so they know each other a little bit. So that would be interesting. And with Porter's little style that he fights like a football player, and Manny, he has to come forward in order for him to really get going, it would be an interesting fight. But then, again, it's the Heyman bubble. We haven't seen yet any serious, real serious matchmaking done after the settlement between Arum and Heyman. And maybe
But part of it's the timing of it, because the settlement was in the very beginning of May, and by then, fights are more or less scheduled by quarters, So the second quarter of the year, was already in stone, and a lot of the summer. So you're really not going to talk about a fight until fall between them, and this is right there. So I'm not too concerned that we haven't seen anything yet. There's enough. This has only been 8 weeks, and you need a certain amount of lead time to start putting fights on the calendar. So I don't think we should read all that much into it.
Let's move on to some other news. This fight has been talked about for a while. It's official now. Chocolatito Gonzalez is going to fight Carlos Cuadras at Inglewood in LA. Interesting here is the date is going to be on September 10th, the same day as Golovkin and Brook. I will go to you, Gail. Looks like to me we're about to have a day-night doubleheader with Brook, with Triple G and Brook during the afternoon, and Chocolatito and Cuadras in the evening.
Yeah, we are. Interesting. The Golovkin-Chocolatito partnership has been a really good one for everybody. It's introduced Chocolatito to all of Golovkin's fan base, which has embraced him. It's also cross-promoted Golovkin. Together, they've been able to sell a lot of tickets, a lot. Chocolatito has been a little itchy, still being on the undercard. And he made it pretty clear after his last fight that he wanted to be in the main event. So he is. And he's going right back to the same venue where he's been very successful in Los Angeles. And he's still, in a way, partnered with Golovkin as a promotional item. And it's really a winning combination for everybody. So September 10th, all of you who know people who are boxing fans, don't expect to get a lot out of them on the 10th. Their day is full. Don't ask them to do anything. Don't ask them to go anywhere. Don't call them. Don't text them, because we're going to be busy.
I'll go to you, Gus. Quadras, undefeated guy, junior bantamweight champion, WBC version. For folks who are not familiar with him, I'll get some insight into who he is and what problems he may pose, for Roman Gonzalez.
Yeah, he's Carlos Quadras is a tremendous fighter, Mike. When we sort of look at the tail of the tape, physically they're actually very, very similar in stature. I think Quadras might be maybe an inch taller. I think he's 5'4". Gonzalez is 5'3", if I'm not sort of mistaken.
Yeah, I believe that's the case.
Yeah, it's orthodox 66-inch reach, so naturally he's obviously just a slightly bigger guy, but in terms of stylistically, he's a very, very talented fighter, both on the inside and outside. Particularly his inside work as well. He's able to cut the ring very, very well. He tends to work the body, certainly from round one. When he was it? I think it was Koki Ito in one of his previous fights, where he began his body work literally from the opening bell, and pretty much was just working on Kiko's body up until sort of round 3 and 4, where he effectively, I don't know whether he was just coasting, but he thought, you know what, the guy's power can't even hurt me. So he's a relentless body merchant, and I can see this almost being a sort of a toe-to-toe war. I mean, he had a very, very good war with Luis Concepcion as well. I don't know whether you caught that fight, Mike. That was back in, I think it was back in Mexico a little while ago.
Okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, and that was a tremendous sort of toe-to-toe war between the two guys. Power-wise, I think Gonzalez is definitely the heavier-handed fighter. He's probably got more sort of knockouts both early, and Gonzalez, we know, he doesn't, Roman Gonzalez is probably the best sort of the guy who makes from defensive to sort of offensive transition. The way he's able to slip and slide punches and launch his own attacks. I only see 1 or 2 fighters in all of boxing who are able to do that. He's actually very, very hard to hit cleanly as well. And we know that Mick Williams-Arroyo in his last fight was having quite a lot of success with his sort of left hooks. And that guy, we know, is one of the heaviest puncher, by none, from sort of straw weight going all the way up to maybe, say, 118, maybe even 122. Very, very heavy-handed. But Gonzalez pretty much walked through all of his punches, and the tank he has as well. When you saw him after the fight, he didn't even break sweat. So he's a relentless fighting machine that can go 15 rounds easy. So for Quadras to have attacks, is going to have to be very, very educated assaults, and he's going to have high level of efficiencies in his attacks. He's going to have to work the body very, very early as well, pretty much from sort of the opening rounds, because that's the only way I feel he's going to be able to break down Roman, and he's got that in his arsenal. So yeah, I'm very, very excited for this fight.
I'll go to you, Jacob and Daniel, to Gus's point. Roman is the clear-cut favorite here, but at the same time, Quadras is a heck of a little fighter who has it in him from a physical standpoint as well as a technical standpoint to give Roman Gonzalez some issues here. Again, Jacob, Daniel, your thoughts on this fight?
I mean, Gus made a lot of good points. I really like this fight. I think it's a good challenge for Chocolatito at this point in his career. And, you know, I'll probably be there at the forum to see it live, and I'll be cheering him on. But, I mean, I like it. I mean, I like if we couldn't get the Estrada rematch or the Inoue fight, I don't think this is a bad kind of runner-up.
Daniel, because when I look at this, I don't put it this way. I would be really, really impressed if Roman Gonzalez would have rolled over this guy as he has previous opponents. Well, outside of the Arroyo bout, which with the distance, of course, but the way he rolled over Sosa, the way he dominated Valoria from like round 3 on, and then steamrolling over guys previously. I would be surprised and impressed if he was to roll over this guy, because to Gus' point and Jacob's point, Cuadras, he can fight.
He can fight, and it's actually, I mentioned this like long before, right? I think right after the Arroyo fight, Cuadras was probably one of the 3 acceptable opponents that fight fans would have for Chocolatito. If it wasn't going to be a rematch with Estrada, he definitely wanted Cuadras and then Inoue. So we got the middle of those 2 options. Cuadras is a hell of a fighter. Like, he's a champion for a reason. He's a hell of a good fighter. And Chocolatito, I don't know, is this going to be at 115 or 112?
115. Chocolatito's moving up to go at his belt.
Oh, okay, that one's going to be different. He was going to do sooner or later. But it's like I said, it's a new test. Chocolatito. And business-wise, like I said, they're still waiting on Inoue. That fight's got to, unfortunately, quote-unquote, marinate a little bit just because Inoue's so young.
And yeah, no, Inoue has that. I think he has a rematch with Narvaez coming up.
Yep. And that's going to be an interesting thing to look at. That's going to be a good fight. Those 2 talked a lot of smack to each other. And September 10th at the Forum, it's going to be interesting. I am disappointed in one aspect of this. In this whole shebang, where it's going to be Triple G, Brook, and then Chocolatito, Cuadras. HBO, unfortunately, it's now chosen then not to air because it looks like it's going to be on the undercard. The rematch between Jesus Soto Caras and Yoshihiro Kamagai. Somehow Golden Boy booked that fight, I think, at the same day, at the same venue, and I think they're working on it to be a part of the undercard, but HBO's not going to show it.
Isn't there a possibility, though, that fight's going to be on the Canelo-Khan undercard? I mean, Canelo-Smith?
Yeah,
No.
that was the word originally.
That was, but I think they wanted to keep the fight in California, and I think they're leaning to Texas for Canelo Smith.
Which makes no sense to me.
It makes sense in the fact that Canelo's a good portion of Canelo's biggest fans are in Texas.
Well, the problem is he going to draw a big enough crowd, considering how big that stadium is? It's a 100,000 seat stadium.
Actually,
he could draw the 30,000 though. He did 30,000 for Kirkland.
Yeah,
I mean that way he was the draw there.
That's the thing. I think they're leaning more towards that Minute Maid Park in Houston for that fight.
No, the word is that Jerry Jones is going to host at Cowboys Stadium. That it's a potential dry run for a Golovkin-Canelo fight. The Cowboys are out of town that weekend, and you know, if they're worried about ticket sales, they can stage it on the field. You know, have a pretty big ringside area. You know, sell a few seats on the perimeter and call it a day.
They might.
Another strategy they can use is also ticket pricing, which is something that Golovkin does. Is that they don't make the tickets so like unreachable, so that even common and fans can get access to tickets to be able to go to these live events.
Good point. And so if they've invested their, $30 or $50 and they get to go see this, when they do have Canelo and Golovkin, and if that's the venue, fans that were there once will say, "Ooh, I'd really like to see that again."
Absolutely, that's the thing. But I think the reason they're picking Houston is they want to keep the prices low.
Right, and they can't do that in Vegas. They just can't.
No, they can't. Yeah, and that's the thing with the Sotocaras and Kamagai. They made such a nice little fight in California. They wanted to keep it in California. But the problem is,
and the issue with Canelo in Vegas at this point, that fight is just a real ho-hum for people in Vegas. People in Las Vegas, or who can get to Las Vegas, have higher expectations versus taking a fight out into other areas in the United States to build a fan base where people are much more eager to see a fight because they don't get a chance very often. So it's a smart thing to do from a business perspective, and they can afford. Listen, this is not going to be a big moneymaker. Nobody is very enthusiastic about this, so they might as well take a loss now to hopefully pump up the fan base and the ticket sales later when it really counts.
That's actually a smart idea. Now, here's probably a good question then. This September 10th, like Gail mentioned, boxing fans are not need to be bothered on this day. Is there a possibility, and I'll leave this to you guys, is there a possibility that you're going to have a live airing of Golovkin Brook, then they're going to have the Chocolatito fight, and then re-air the Triple G fight right afterwards?
That's why I was saying it looks like it's going to be a day-night doubleheader.
Yeah. HBO has done that many times before, yeah. I think, where a fight has happened earlier in the day, and then they'll re-air it that night again.
Yeah. Well, wouldn't that make Chocolatito feel like I'm still technically the undercard, even though I'm not in the same building? I'm leading up to a Golovkin fight again.
Well, no, not if it's a replay. I mean, if it's the second airing, which it would be.
I mean, I hate to say it, but he is the undercard. I mean, he's getting to headline a card himself at his own arena. But I mean, I don't want to kid in. I mean, I'm not kidding myself when Triple G is still the bigger draw.
Yeah, and I just think that he's still going to have his main event, Chocolatito, in a fight that everybody's going to be watching live. And besides, most of the boxing fans, they're going to see Canelo. They're going to see, Triple G Brook live anyway. So the re-airing, I wouldn't be bothered by that.
Yeah, it's a repeat. It would be different if they had held it back delay. But, how many people, watched Kovalev and Chilemba, for the first time later in the day, unless you were at work? It was a pretty easy fight to find. And even if you couldn't watch it live, it was on YouTube immediately.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they're not going to.
We're also in a day and age where.
Yeah.
We're also in a day and age of social media, though, that you can't really delay fights anymore because people get access to them, and then they're either tweeting about it or it's on Facebook or it's all over the place. So I mean,
right.
The element of surprise it just doesn't exist anymore in this day and age.
Right.
Yeah.
One big plus for both these fights, well worth mentioning, these are not pay-per-view fights. Neither of them are.
Indeed, we've had discussion, kind of serious discussion here, about Kovalev and about Ward and negotiations that eventually led up to Brook and Triple G, and we just finished talking about Ramon Gonzalez. I think we're going to go into the bit of the ridiculous here, and I might have to give Gail the floor here just a minute.
Are you teeing me up? I feel the pitch coming.
As news broke today, as a matter of fact, that Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., who was expected to fight next month against Jalen Love, has broke away from camp. Left, according to Freddie Roach, I'm going to read verbatim, he had a lot of pressure on him, and he didn't like it. So he said he's going to train at home for a while, and I said that's okay. So I don't think that he's going to fight at this moment. My next fight after Crawford Postal will be training with my new guy, Jesus Cuellar. I'm trying to bring him back to the old guy who never said no to me once in 4 fights, and I haven't found that guy yet. I do like him as a person. I do want to help him if I can, but there's only so much that I can do. If he doesn't come here, then there's nothing I can do. Gail, I know when you heard this on Twitter, you were not happy about it. You didn't like it one bit. I'm going to give you the floor right now to vent, raise hell, whatever you want to do.
Wait, let me grab my popcorn right quick.
Yeah, get your snacks, pour beverage. I'm stone cold sober, by the way. Just want to make that very, very clear. This man disgraces his father's good name. On a night, by the way, when Showtime Extreme has aired Chavez Whitaker.
And they get ready to air Chavez Camacho.
They have been doing 30 days of. The only reason that Chavez Jr.'s antics are being tolerated at this moment is in deference and in respect to his father. But little by little, every last nerve has been worn thin. I personally cannot believe a Hall of Fame trainer like Freddie Roach is put up with Chavez Jr.'s bullshit this long, that he wouldn't show him the back of his hand. He has wasted that man's time. Jr. has disrespected him numerous times. We all remember when Roach was in vain trying to train this guy who has no work ethic whatsoever, who quit on the stool against Fonfara several months ago. He has squandered all the natural talent he has, which he does have. He's not only got the name and the pedigree, he does have the natural ability, but the clay remains a lump of clay unless you work hard to mold it into something that's a piece of art. And Chavez Jr. is a lazy, entitled little bastard who wants everything handed to him because, God forbid, he have to cut down on the partying and all the other priorities he's got in life, right? So, here we go, and he wants Freddie to indulge him. And why Freddie agreed to train him again, the man needs to have his head examined. Normally Freddie's, a pretty straight shooter and doesn't put up with a lot of crap. And, when you've got somebody who is exchanging their knowledge and talent as a trainer, they only have so much time in the day. Think about how many young fighters out there would love to get just a few minutes of Roach's time, just a little bit of his attention, just possibly be brought under his wing to train. They'd work their ass off for that guy. They would respect everything he said, take direction, listen, work, pay attention. Chavez Jr., no. He is burning daylight with Roach. That's almost as grievous a sin to me as the damage he's done disrespecting his father.
And as you're talking, Gail, I'm showing the exact quotes right here. So. Yeah, I'm showing the exact quotes as you're talking. Proceed.
There you go. Chavez Jr. needs to hang it up. Everyone else needs to stop enabling him. Let him train at home or do whatever the hell he feels like, or get up at 6 o'clock at night, or stand people up for training, all of which he's done, all of which he continues to do. Nobody should buy a ticket. The crowd at StubHub, when he quit on the stool, when he had his no boss moment, was so enraged. Everybody needs to remember that. Everyone needs to remember how angry they were at that little effort. His father was angry that night. The only one happy was Fonfara, who put him in his place, and rightfully so.
And me, I was happy.
And I was extremely happy up to the point when the beer started flying, and I had a story to write, so that was about it. But he is a disgrace to his family and a disgrace to the sport, and he needs out. And the only way to do it is for all of us fans now to say no mas to him.
Does anybody have anything else to chime on this, to add in on this nonsense,
Gail,
this ridiculousness?
No, I want to buy a ticket though because I want to see again his ass kick. Like I bought the ticket for Fanfara. It was me, my brother, my friend, and a bunch of Polish people off to the side were the only people cheering for Fanfara. And you know what? Cesar Chavez Jr. got his comeuppance, and it was awesome.
It was a thing of beauty. It really was. But you know, he's had several. And God, you just can't. He's like gum on the bottom of your shoe. You just can't peel that shit off. He keeps coming back.
I keep saying, Gus, and Daniel, he is, you know, Chavez is the definition of a privileged, spoiled, entitled athlete, not just athlete, but person. And what we're seeing right now is another example of that. When will this fool ever learn? Starting with you, Gus, and then Daniel.
Mike, honestly, genuinely, I've got no comment on this situation. I'm at a loss for words.
Daniel?
There's a lot of talk about privilege. You mentioned it, Michael. There's always been this little thought out there that Chavez Jr., because unfortunately the way his dad lived his life when he was in his prime, wants to in some way subconsciously prove to his dad that I can do everything better than you. But in doing so, he makes the same mistakes. Now, everybody knows that Chavez Sr. had bouts with alcoholism, had bouts with drug abuse, and Chavez Jr., as I say, has been well known to smoke a little bit of the ganja.
Respect.
Mm-hmm. And
That's different from Arreola skunk, but proceed.
yeah.
Oh,
no.
To make that demarcation.
Yeah, no,
no. Arreola, no. Arreola gets his stuff from East LA. Chavez Jr. has to get his stuff probably specially wrapped in a nice little tinfoil can made literally from Cancun to be sent to him. That's how little we think of this guy. Think about that. I just made a complete, utter wild analogy about delivering weed because of how privileged and how spoiled this piece of shit is. He's literally now become a piece of shit. Where he has disgraced his dad's name. You know, it's very, very tough. It's very, very tough to live up to a man who's considered the greatest in your country from that area. Like, I can completely understand. Like, Michael Jordan Jr. completely understands trying to follow in Michael Jordan's shadow. But you don't see him embarrassing Michael Jordan either.
No. Well, and you really, as the progeny of somebody with that famous a name and that legacy, you know, you really need to think long and hard whether you want to try to live up to that. And I admit, I'd be the first to say that is a very tough thing to do. You know, this is you set yourself nearly an impossible bar to clear. And even had Chavez Jr. applied himself every day of his life, stayed clean, worked hard, you know, even if he equaled what his father was able to do, he'd always be the one that came second. Always. That's tough. I admit that. But on the other hand, don't jerk us all around over it either. Don't take advantage of what you've been handed and mess with everybody. Because we, the fans, are the ones spending our time and attention and our money seeing your fights, you know, buying those premium channels to watch, everything that goes with it. You know, the fans eventually are the ones who have to pay your way. And we're not having it anymore. We're just simply not having it.
That's the bad part of it, kid. This is the part that makes me angry. He knows he has that small enclave of Mexican fans that feel it is not like an obligation. It is their honor-bound duty to cheer for this guy just because of who his father was. He knows he has that. And the fact
and
about
you're so right. In much the same way, I think that Freddie Roach feels an obligation to try to work with him because of his respect for Senior. Because otherwise, he would have thrown that kid's ass out of his gym years ago.
Exactly, but that's the thing. You do everything possible to alienate the very people that you need to make a living. Because you know there's a small little section that's always going to be yes men, but they're not yes men because of you. They're yes men because of your last name. And let's actually put it all into real perspective. Chavez Jr. is pretty much the prime example of a Heyman fighter. Somebody who is getting overpaid, because Showtime is really pissed off. Showtime's pissed off about this. Doesn't really put in that work, and in the biggest performances in that venue has gotten his ass whooped. Now, we've talked about this guy before. Who does that sound like? As Gail mentioned, he's about billions.
Yeah, the fighter that I like least second most to Chavez, Broner.
Wow, second most?
Second, yeah. No, Chavez is right at the top. Broner is number 2.
Wow.
Part of what
are you gonna mail him an award?
Yeah, I did. Yes, as a matter of fact, I could do that, and it would be a case of Twinkies. Neither of them.
Wow.
Wow, we're wasting time on this thing, Mike.
Yeah. Well, think about this. Steve Kim literally asked Freddie Roach when he was watching Junior train, as a serious question, it wasn't even a joke, as a serious question, why don't you just let him fight a cruiserweight?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And he should. Because he goes into the ring at 180, pretty much. Any fight. He has no discipline. None. When you're smoking that much weed, you're hungry. I get it.
I know how we get rid of Chavez Jr. You need Chavez Sr. to disown him, because all the respect that people have for Chavez Sr., if he just said, you know what, fuck it, my kid's a fucking loser, I'm done with him, you better believe all those fans will jump on that wagon.
Well, Jacob, in theory, he said that in so many words after the last fight with Fonfara.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's still by his side. He's still there. I mean, I understand. It's his son. He's not going to do that. He's not going to do that. But I don't know. Maybe he can throw a left hook and knock him out. I don't know.
Yeah, let's move on, because I've had enough talking about this nonsense.
Yeah, I've had my say, and I thank you all. This is extremely therapeutic, and you can send me your bill.
I'm going to go to you first, Gus, on this. We're going to start previewing what's happening this weekend. Big bout, of course, is Deontay Wilder fighting Chris Arreola in Birmingham, Alabama on Showtime. Kind of a make-up day for Wilder's postponed bout with Povetkin. Look, Arreola, he's there. He looks like he's in decent shape. I don't think he has much of a chance to win, though. I think Wilder is going, if he's not too distracted, is not too disappointed from the Povetkin bout, I think he's going to punish this guy. I don't think it's going to be a knockout early, because that's when Arreola's at his strongest. But once the fight goes some rounds, the fatigue will set in, and I think he will eventually batter him, Chris Arreola, until he stops him late.
Ooh. Well, Mike, I'm going for an Arreola knockout in round 2.
Oh dear, stop. Stop it,
Hell yeah.
Yeah, hell yeah. No, Mike, Deontay Wilder to me, Mike, is garbage. Pure, unadulterated garbage. I've watched him both in the amateurs and in the professionals, and I don't know what it is. I just see a mismatch between his upper body and his lower body. People talk about him being a great athlete. You know, if he was a great athlete, he would be playing professional football or basketball. He's a reasonably good athlete, but there's just poor coordination throughout his fights. You know, his footwork is, I think, is absolutely appalling. He has no defense whatsoever. And his level of opposition, Mike, is just regressing all the time. You know, what does it say when Arreola himself comes out and says, "I didn't even deserve this shot at the title"? You know, I think Deontay Wilder was almost, you know, pleased with what sort of transpired with Povetkin, because ultimately I don't really think he even wanted to go to Russia and fight him. But
I disagree with that, but that's another subject for another day.
Because, you know, what do you do when a fight of that sort of magnitude falls through? You know, there was, you know, better opposition. And I've looked at the WBC rankings. You know, Arreola was conveniently added to the rankings, you know, from 38 to 9 or whatever, just to sort of facilitate this fight. So it's just a load of nonsense. But Arreola, he's aggressive, he's brave, he can punch a little bit. The two sort of Stavern fights, yeah, we saw, you know, his nose exploding or whatever else, but I'm not sure what's going to transpire, but yeah, I'll still go with an Arreola knockout early.
Nah. I just cannot disagree.
Maybe it's more hope than anything.
I cannot disagree more. Again, I think Wilder's going to be smart enough to understand that Arreola is at his most dangerous early, and he may fight careful as a result. But again, as the fight goes on, he's going to open up on this guy. Arreola's going to take it for a while, but he's not going to be able to take it for 12 rounds. And I just think he's going to eventually stop him. I go to you, Gail, and then you, Jacob, and finally Daniel.
Well, I think Arreola's got the right attitude for this fight. It's going to give him that fighting chance that he has. He's got a puncher's chance. He says that because he's going to be in Wilder territory in Alabama, he will not get a decision from the judges. He feels he must knock him out. He must to win, and that he's got to fight him on the inside. He cannot let Wilder get distance on him. And I think he's absolutely right. And he says, you know, any guy can be knocked out. He could be losing, 11.5 rounds to 0 and still get a knockout at the end of the fight. You gotta love his attitude. He says, I'm gotta rush him. I'm the one that's got to keep him on his heels. In fact, his exact quote in a Facebook Live interview session this afternoon was, "If I'm at distance, man, I'm fucked." And that's your Chris Arreola. He says he's lost about 15 pounds, but he said, man, that's why I'm a heavyweight.
Man, listen, given how he eats, he could take a simple dump and lose 15 pounds and gain it back the next day.
He did say he'd been going nuts. He hasn't had in and out for like 6 weeks, and so that's the first thing he's going to do when he wins. Chris slimmed down quite a bit for his last couple of fights. I don't think it served him very well. I think he was too drained by it. So this time he's said he's focused strictly on training and eating the right things, that he's not concerned about the scale as much as he is about how he feels and how strong he is. So he said he's lost, 10, 15 pounds at the most. He said he's felt very focused. He's done everything his trainer wanted him to do. He's worked every day his trainer wants him to work. And he said, his attitude is going to be get in there, get the knockout, start on the inside, body, and the head will follow. And I think that's the right approach. Whether it'll work for him, I don't know. I like Chris. I can't help it. Especially if you're around him in Southern California, which most of us are, and we see him at other fights and you see him around, he's been a good guy. He is a very straight shooter. He's had his issues staying focused, and he admits to all his mistakes. And whatever happens, I hope he goes out in a blaze of glory.
Jacob and Daniel, your thoughts?
I said when this fight got made that if I was the advisor to Arreola, I'd train for 3 rounds and just put the pedal to the metal and just go out and just put it on Wilder. That's his only chance, in my opinion. I'm not as optimistic as Gus is. An earlier Chris Arreola knockout. Although I did hear on the previous show of the Arreola Briggs potential championship fight for all the marbles, which would be interesting. But
nope.
I'd love that.
No.
Let's go, champ.
That was mostly for Scorsese. He was the one that I think was putting it up there. But anyway, I disagree with you, Gus, in the sense, and I'm not a Wilder fan at all. I don't like him. I mean, not as a person. I just don't think he's that great of a fighter. But I don't think he's garbage either. I couldn't in good conscience say that he's garbage. I think he's going to be smart in this fight. I have to give him credit in the sense that he did go to Russia, or he was going to go to Russia to go fight Povetkin. Povetkin fucked that up. That's all on Povetkin. And you got to give him props for doing that. I mean, he's a champion. He was going to go to Russia. But I think it'll probably be Wilder will stop Arreola because we know Arreola doesn't have the tank. I don't think Arreola's chin is what it used to be. I don't think his punching power is what it used to be. I know he says he's going to go to the body and stuff, but Arreola is pretty much a headhunter. And, eventually his hands are going to drop. Wilder's going to land some crushing blows on him. And I think he stops him, I'll say, like in the 8th round. And he'll move on.
Daniel?
Oh, wow. There's so many things I need to digest from what Gus just said. I will say this, Gus, Deontay Wilder was in community college trying to get a scholarship from the Alabama Crimson Tide when he found out he was a father and then had to turn to boxing for economic reasons. That's one aspect. He might have wound up in the NBA. He's athletic enough. He would have wound up in the NBA. And I know I've heard a lot of the comparisons about like his body doesn't match, his upper body doesn't match his lower body. I've seen plenty of people that are like that. Actually, I can point to one person who look at his body difference, but he plays extremely well. His name's Kevin Durant. But I'm gonna leave it at that for the moment. But in this fight, yeah, it's gonna be a Wilder. It's gonna be Wilder. It's probably gonna be in the middle rounds. Because Arreola is true, what Jacob said. Arreola needs to blitz early to have any shot at Wilder. The problem is, I think, if he tries to slim down, we've noticed it. We noticed it in the Kaufman fight. His power's not there if he tries to slim down. As much of a good of a shape he's in, he needs to be the fat cholo with the power. He needs to be the fat cholo with the power. But that unfortunately leaves a lot of avenues for Deontay Wilder. Now, we've seen Wilder. He improves in some aspect in every single one of his fights. Whether we're with Stavern, like you now know, we knew he can go 12 rounds. In the fights with Molina, was that uppercut. I think it was the right hook with the Wapas. And it was just the patience of dealing with an awkward style with Spilka. He learns as he goes along. He's even admitted, I'm still learning. This is still on-the-job training for him. So he's probably going to learn. He's probably need to learn now to have a fighter that's really going to try to blitz him early. But he's probably going to go through it. He's going to pace himself. He's probably going to He's probably going to wind up getting a stoppage in the middle rounds. And Arreola pretty much admitted this is his last chance. Now, granted, I personally would have liked this to have been Brian Jennings, but yeah, Al Heyman will never work with James Prince ever. So we're gonna leave that one at the table. It's gonna be an interesting fight. It's a PBC on Fox fight, so the Fox ratings are probably gonna be decent for that one. And the undercard's not that bad. We're gonna see Sammy Vasquez Jr. in that one.
And speaking of Vasquez, I want to talk about him quickly. I want to split the next few fights up between everybody else individually. I'll go to you on this one, Jacob. You mentioned Daniel just mentioned Sammy Vasquez, undefeated welterweight prospect, southpaw. Your thoughts on his upcoming his fight on the undercard of Wilder and Arreola? Is this basically a showcase bout for him? Your thoughts?
Yeah, I do think it is more on the lines of a showcase fight. You know, his last outing, I got to see him his last outing on the undercard of the Guerrero Garcia. I think Sammy Vasquez has some decent skills, and again, like most fighters, I'd like to see them in the ring a little bit more often, and you know, stepping up the competition. But unfortunately, I think his original opponents got something happened, so I think this is the fight that we're left with.
I'm gonna go to you, Gail. Talk about a fight in the UK, kind of a part of a doubleheader. Guillermo Rigondeaux, we finally get to see him back in the ring. He's going to fight James Dickens. Actual title defense. They've given Rigondeaux back his WBA 122-pound belt. I'm still a Rigo fan. I know he gets a lot of criticism. Some of it is deserved. I think some of it is not. Thoughts on Rigo finally getting back into the ring?
Rigo needs to get back in the ring. I'm glad to see him back in the ring. But he needs to show us something. He's been back now long enough to get in some rounds for real and some training. And he really has no more excuses with ring rust or shaking it off or readjusting, you know, after sitting out so long due to his various contract issues. He needs to put on a good show, not just a Rigo good show with all the technical skills that he needs to demonstrate, but he needs to put out a fight that make him someone the fans want to see again. Now, he's not going to be ever in a Salido Vargas fight. That's never going to happen. But just as we were speaking about the fans, you know, needing to be respected because we are the ones putting out the money and we are the ones paying their salaries in the end, Rigo needs to respect that as well. So I hope he doesn't just do what he needs to get along. I've seen video of him training. He looks very good. I've been very impressed with some of the coordination drills I've seen, which are floating around. Many of you, I'm sure, have seen. Thanks to the one and only EJ Boxing Live, who has showed up here tonight at the late hour. So let's see what he can do. I mean, I have no doubt he's going to win. Does anybody have any doubt he's going to win?
Oh, there's no doubt about it.
Let's see the manner in which he performs. That's going to be critically important this weekend.
Let's get EJ into this quickly since Gail mentioned the aforementioned videos that EJ shared of him. Your thoughts on Rigo finally getting back into the ring against Dickens?
Yeah, man, it's good to see, man. How you guys doing? Goss, Daniel, Gail, man, it's good to catch up with you guys, man. How you doing, Jacob? Yeah, man. It's good to see Rigo in the ring. It's weird though because it's like it's so on a low card. I know it's in England, UK, and stuff like that. It should be bigger, right? It should be like the bell should be ringing, the horn should be springing. But unfortunately, it's come on the background of Triple G and Kell Brook. I know that's not happening for a while, but the timing is everything. And this fight is not really a fight. I mean, good to see Rigo and stuff like that fight in the UK, but. No, it's not really no big thing until he gets in the ring. We have to find out, but we'll see what Rigo is. Maybe they're going to be upset, maybe not, but it's good to see Rigo. And like Gail said, Rigo looks spectacular. He looks great. Also, that's the same. He's the same trainer of Luke Campbell, and they work together as well. So he's probably overtraining Luke. Luke's got a fight soon as well. I think he got a fight in Leeds on that card where Dillian White's fighting. What's his name again? Allen. What's his name again?
Dave Allen.
Yeah, there you go. Dave Allen, yeah. Dave Allen, yeah. So that's probably why he's over as well to help out with that. So we're seeing it. But I'm good to see Rigo on that card. Frank Warren needs all the help he can get. His company's not doing very that well, and yeah, Rigo. We see Rigo. Rigo should put on the performance, but hey, listen, mate. I'm not gonna call it upset, but hey, listen. I've been saying Rigo's downfall for a while, but I don't think it's gonna be that. I don't think it's gonna be on Saturday night. So
what's the odds, EJ?
I think you see the odds are probably crazy, but I'm not even gonna go there. I'm not gonna go there. But you know what? Yeah, listen. If it happens, if it happens, I mentioned it, but I didn't actually like go out the limb. I'm not getting out the limb.
Just put a few dollars down, and then
Nah. Hey, talking about a few dollars if you want, yeah. Kell Brook, hey, remember I said Eubank was gonna win. If you're interested, yeah, hey, put a little money down on Kell Brook. Yeah, listen, Eddie Hearn has the ring, he has the judges, he has the referee, and also they might put something in Triple G's food. Now I'm only joking, but
let me ask you quickly before I move on. Your thoughts on this Triple G Brook fight, as well as the backdrop, of course, is the failure to get Triple G and Eubank Jr. made. I make the argument that I can understand where the Eubanks are coming from, because I made the comparison what they're trying to fight for. I compared it to what a artist in music tries to fight for in terms of having their masters, in terms of control. Your thoughts on all that?
Absolutely, yeah. What you just said there is absolutely correct. And Eddie Hearn has a 2-fight contract fight, and this is just my opinion, not necessarily fact, right? He has a 2-fight deal with Eddie Hearn. He gave them the first fight. In the second fight, Eddie Hearn's obligated to get the Triple G fight. So even though all this happened, this fight still can happen. I think Eddie was trying to teach Eubank Jr. a lesson. Say, well, listen, if you're going to do that and you're going to mess me around, you put me in a run, I'm going to put Kell Brook. But effectively, you're getting rid of Kell Brook off the Brooks. Kell Brook, there's 2 things happen to Kell Brook. Yeah? Kell Brook's going to get beat, and he's going to get beat. Now, I'm joking. Kell Brook could get murdered, in fact, murdered by Triple G. And then you have him off your books, and his career will never be the same again. And Eubank could still have that fight, or Kell Brook wins, and you Junior still wins. So there's still, even though it seems like it's a dire situation, they can still fix Eubank's career. And Eddie Hearn hasn't said, he's come out and said all these things about Cena, he should leave his dad, but he hasn't said he's not going to work with him again. Also, Frank Warren's come out on Eye for London and said, I'm never going to talk to the dad again, but he hasn't said I'm not going to talk to the son again. They can still make a deal. And it's funny because they're saying this. Shows to me that they still want the Eubanks on their cards. They still need him. And so the dad's got a kind of valid point that they need him. And that's why he's making these points of trying to get all these negotiations his way. Talking about why he got cut over, like I said, I think Eddie was trying to teach him a lesson. And is the lesson learned? I don't know. And he's come out there and said all these things, and I think he's trying to get Eubank to retaliate. But if they retaliate, I think then it will make the contract non and void, and maybe Eddie can get out of the contract, and Eubank's not biting. He's making Eddie honor the contract. And the Kell Brook, like I said, no one giving Kell Brook a fight. Kell Brook wasn't even asking for Triple G. I mean, he only mentioned it on a slight to get back at Khan because Khan wanted to make the fight with him. That's the reason why he mentioned it. So in effect, you're kind of destroying a good guy. A good welterweight will give good fights, and he's actually big for the welterweight, but he's going to be small for women. I look at them, comparing them right next to each other. Triple G looks so big, man. He looks wide as well, and Kell Brook's probably put on more weight. It looks so hard for Kell. It's just hard. I mean, listen, this is your career at the end, your life as well. It's really. Hey, listen, I'm gonna pick Kell. I'm gonna put money on Kell though because I'm a good old Brit and stuff like that. But you can make some change. You never know, man. You never know. You just want to kind of. The odds are so ridiculous. Why not? But yeah, I don't think he'll win. I think, like I said, Eubanks are doing the right thing, right? For his son, he's doing the right thing for his son. For boxing, I mean, look, and why are not boxers getting the first penny? Why? It's not unreasonable to ask that. Why are the networks and the manager and everyone else getting money before the fighter? It's the fighter who goes in the ring and risks his life and gives the entertainment. So what Eubanks asking for is not unreasonable in my eyes. Is the way he's going to buy it? Well, you could argue that, but why is Eddie Hearn feeling like he has to put his business out. Eubank is a fellow promoter. Why is he putting his business out there? You could argue the case that Eddie's been threatened by it, but at the end of the day, we have to see how this thing plays out. But it doesn't matter. Going back to Rigo is undershadowed by this whole thing, and it's good for boxing. I mean, we're talking about it. And I talked to Gail. Gail says she's thinking about coming to the UK, so me and Gus will probably meet up with her at the press conference coming fight week. So, hey, you guys over here, if you're coming to make a trip over the UK, why not? I mean, it's going to be a big showcase. They have some really good cards. We've got another world title on the card. We have a flyweight. Who's he fighting? He's fighting that guy, Ramiro, the guy who just beat Thing recently.
Casemiro.
Casemiro.
Yeah, he's fighting against, what's his flyweight name? In his flyweight. So he's on the card anyway. There's loads of guys on the card as well. So it's going to be a great fight night. You guys want to come down from America? Why not, man? You know what I mean?
Right.
Try and get you. If you ain't got press credentials, I should try and fiddle with that as well beforehand as well. Let me know beforehand. Because I'll talk to my good friend Eddie Hearn and we'll see about that as well.
EJ though, they're killing me because a short little drive up the freeway the same night, we got Chocolatito.
Oh yeah. Oh, is that the same night as the Kell Brook?
Yeah.
There is.
It looks like it's going to be a day-night doubleheader with Triple G and Brook, and then in the evening, Chocolatito fighting Quadras at 115. So.
Oh wow, man. Well, you know what? Might as well stay where you are, girl, man.
Yeah.
You don't want to miss that one. You just don't want to, because you know what? It's not even it's not really a competitive in terms of that, but that one there is a real good one because can Chocolatito go up and become a 4-weight? Wow, against that guy, that's a really good fight. You know what I mean? So that's competitive as well. That's going to be more competitive.
I want to move on and go to Daniel and Gus, and then talk about Daniel's favorite fighter, Terry Flanagan. He's going to be fighting a South African by the name of Fana, and get Daniel why he loves this fight so much. And go to Gus. Gus tried to explain to me why this 42-year-old guy is a good opponent for Terry Flanagan. Proceed, fellas.
Okay, Gus, I'm gonna just leave it at this.
Tongue-in-cheek, Mike.
yeah, tongue-in-cheek, but I'm gonna say it bluntly as I can. Fuck Terry
Good
Flanagan.
understand the English humor when I'm being.
What was that?
I said you're still gonna try and figure out the English humor of sarcasm.
My bad, my mistake.
Oh God.
Well, no offense, but again, why? I don't understand. If they're gonna make an optional defense, there are a lot of other guys at 135 that you could fight and get some credibility, especially in light of his countrymen coming off of a career best win and then turning right around, Cruller turning career best win and turning right around to fight Linares. This fight makes no sense at all for Flanagan. None.
You know what? He should have just run the balls out and just say, you know what? I need a name. I'm gonna call Bob Arum. We know he doesn't deserve it right now. Let's give Felix Verdejo a shot.
Right.
But God, this is one of the things that irritates me with Flanagan, because the way his opponents are picked, it's like kind of Gus how he feels with Wilder's opponents. I just have it worse, because each opponent I go, why? Like, why do they allow you to still have a belt when you're doing crap like this? Oh God! Like I said, fuck Terry Flanagan. The floor is yours, Gus.
All right. Yeah, Mike, pardon my lack of enthusiasm for the Wilder fight. I mean, he's not garbage. He's a tremendous fighter, but yeah, it's the level of opposition. But just very quickly, that Felix Diaz, Sammy Vasquez, that's the most exciting fight for me. Diaz, a 2008 Olympic champion, is a tremendous fighter, but whether he can negate, was it a 5-inch reach? Sorry, could be 5-inch height and a 4-inch reach disadvantage, is another question. But I think he's a better boxer, but he's going to have to cut the distance and try and break him on the inside, like he did against Lamont Peterson, where he got I felt he got a very bad decision. tough task, but he's got the ability. So that's the fight I'm looking most forward to out of all of the fights of the weekend. But reference this fight, yeah, it's Mzonke. I think it's his 48th bout. I think he's got 9 defeats from the top of my record. Campaigning almost exclusively as a super featherweight. Predominantly all of his fights being in South Africa. I mean, the one vivid memory I have was, what was it? Back in, I think it was 11 years ago, when he challenged the great Marco Antonio Barrera. I think it was in Texas.
Yeah, he got stopped that night.
Yeah, for his WBC super featherweight fight, and yeah, he got massacred pretty much. But you know, he's back on the trail now. He's trying to campaign up at lightweight. You know, he's won a couple of sort of regional, you know, South African sort of international titles, etc. Yeah, it is a disappointing fight, but from my understanding, it wasn't Flanagan's first or second or third choice of opponents. They were inevitably trying to get a lot better caliber of opponents. I'm not as critical as Daniel is on Flanagan. I do think he's a very, very good, accomplished fighter. Still has a lot more he can do in the ring, and yeah, you know, the onus is very much on Frank Warren now to say, look, you know, you've had 2 voluntaries now. You know, let's you know, step up the opposition. Let's try and even target, you know, the winner of Richard Comey and Robert Easter, because Comey is a London-based Ghanaian, so that fight, if he prevails, can be made for the IBF belt. So, you know, let's hope something.
I mean, the only thing I can think of is they wanted as safe an opponent as they can, leading up to a fight with Rigondeaux later on this year. That's the only thing I can think why this fight is happening.
But this is how bad it is, Mike. Okay, I don't know. I know I joined in a little late.
I don't think so. No.
I know. I know I joined in a little late. I don't know if you talked about the debacle that was on PBC on ESPN last weekend.
No, I didn't talk about the fight because it was so bad.
That's why I'd rather watch that than this Tara Flanagan fight. And I say that willingly. That's
Cut his mic.
What was that, Gus?
Cut his mic.
Oh no!
It's just biased hatred now coming out. So, I ain't doing Inscribe a podcast anymore now.
Ooh. Fighting words.
Yeah, Barrios, he's a good fighter, but that was a large part of it has to do with his opponent. I have to say that. But yeah, that was, and he won without any doubt. But that was an ugly looking fight. I just have to acknowledge that.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, that was just horrible. You know,
the running Italian, he was trying to fight even smaller than he is, whatever, 5 or 6 inch. Yeah.
It's insane.
Almost crouching down.
Yeah, it was crouching, and the other guy didn't throw any punches. I think the total amount of punches thrown in that fight, actually not landed, was less than or around 100 combined.
Yeah.
And pretty much all of them started from round 8 onwards.
Pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, yeah.
Indeed.
Wow. Yeah, and I mean, you could hear the crowd turning on them about the end of the second round.
Yeah.
And they should have.
They spoke for all of us.
And they should have, and I think we're going to end the show on that note. Go around the panel here.
Wait, Mike. Michael Boyce.
Oh, I didn't see you. I didn't see you, Michael Boyce. I'm sorry. Let me go back. Actually, a couple of questions. Earlier discussion we talked about your thoughts on Kovalev's performance against Chilemba. Do you think it exposed some flaws in Kovalev heading into his bout with Andre Ward? And we were talking extensive. Who was talking in great depth about this Golovkin, Kell Brook bout. Your level of surprise that that bout is being made.
Well,
Cut his mic, Gus.
Cut his mic.
Cut his mic.
Oh,
Well, let me tackle the first question first. And I think I mentioned it to you. The Kovalev that we've seen this past Monday, he will not be Andre Ward, not with that performance. Because everything that Ward does everything better than what Chilemba brought to the table this past Monday night. That being said, I'm totally confident in, John David Jackson. Whatever adjustments that need to be made, he will make those adjustments. Going into November 19th, which I'm ecstatic for because I can't wait for this fight to happen. Those adjustments will be made, but the Kovalev performance, and maybe it's because it's home game or with nerves or what have you. I mean, he did what he needed to do, and I think, in retrospect, him going 12 rounds, I think it's going to be a benefit to Kovalev. But you know what? It's also going to be a benefit to Andre Ward, so he can look at this fight and he can see whatever, for lack of a better term, deficiencies that Kovalev may have, and he could probably use that to his advantage. But in the same token, the fact that Kovalev just went 12 rounds with a fighter that, to a lesser degree, does the same thing lesser than what Andre Ward does, that's also going to benefit him because he's going to see what Andre Ward does on November 19th. So I wouldn't, with that performance, he's not going to beat Andre Ward, but I'm confident in John David. He will make the requisite adjustments for Kovalev. Now, in regards to your second question about Kell Brook and the Triple G, one, I was shocked. That's number one. And number two, Sister Gail, I read your piece about it, and it was an outstanding piece, and you made a lot of great points, which I totally agree with. We should. I'm to be honest with you, I am kind of excited for this fight because one, me being a Kell Brook fan, and he's not getting the looks from 147. Then I felt he deserved. I wish, just from a fan perspective, I wish Brook would have got the last Mayweather fight because you could have looked at it. He could have had all the belts could have been on the line, and me as a fan, I still have stock with the belts. So I wish he would have had that. But with Kell Brook and Triple G, we have to really look at the gentlemen, the boxers at 160, because they are just ducking and ducking and ducking Triple G. So I'm not gonna go after Triple G in this respect because nobody wants to fight him. And I'm sorry, but Daniel Jacobs, come on, what are you doing? You are the regular WBA champion, which that's a joke. I get it. I totally get it. What are you doing? He needs, everyone at 160 needs to step up and fight this man. And if you take an ass whipping, if you take an L, at least you step up to the plate. What happened to the best fighting the best? And I know 160's weak. We know 160's weak, but come on. So I don't blame Kell Brook for this major opportunity because there's gentlemen in 147 that don't want to fight him either for whatever reason. And I'm glad that, from a personal standpoint, I'm glad, I know he had a couple of fights already, but I'm glad he overcame that stabbing and stuff like that. But the shit has to stop. If you're at 160, please, this is ridiculous. Fight Triple G. That's what I had to say. But I'm looking forward to that fight too because I like Kell Brook as well.
Thank you.
Before we begin to shut things down, EJ, quickly. Before we begin to shut down things, EJ, quickly, your thoughts on Kovalev, the fight, his win over Chilemba. What impression did that leave on you, particularly heading into the fight with Andre Ward?
You know what? For all the things Kovalev's achieved, yeah, he is terrible because the way he's getting treated, I don't think he's getting treated the way he should. He's one of the best fighters in the sport, and he's fighting on a Monday on a nonchalant card that no one even cares about. And the thing is, it shows in his performance, lackluster. That's what that was. It was a lackluster performance, and you know what it was? Isaac Chilemba was a tough dude. Right, he knew he had no power, and Kovalev was putting too much in trying to knock him out in front of his home fans, and it didn't work. And in a way, it's probably good for him that you could say there's certain weaknesses you could pick up for him. But I tell you what, man, if he doesn't get a big fight, you won't be surprised if someone upsets him real quick. Because the thing is, yeah, like as a fighter, you want to get big paydays, you want to be respected, and one of the guys in the sport. He ain't, because he's promoted as Cafe Diva, I don't know why they negotiated him from fight on a Monday. Isaac Chilemba didn't even come with his trainer, so you should have knocked him out. And that wasn't the case. He didn't knock him out. He knocked him down, but he didn't knock him out. You had everything laid out for you for beating him up, beating Isaac Chilemba. It didn't happen, but I knew that already because Isaac's a very tough guy. He's been 20-something 4 rounds with Tony Bellew, who you can see it's really hard. So in my opinion, Andre Ward himself didn't look spectacular in his fight. To be honest with you, are they both past their best? I don't know. But I can tell you one thing, we want to see it. We want to see the best fight in the best, like, what's his name? Michael just said, the best other Michael. There's 2 Michaels in it. You want to see the best fight in the best. And in my opinion, Sergey Kovalev, is he on? I think he might be on the slide. Just because in terms of desire. There's no desire, you know what I mean? He might think, man, I'm going to beat Andre Ward easy. And that lack of desire might cause you to lose. And, you know, the aura of being the most feared guy in the sport, I think that's gone as well, slightly. Can he bring it back by knocking out Andre Ward? He may be. But, you know, once it's gone, it's gone. And I think, to a certain degree, that's what happened on that night. It was a lackluster fight. And Isaac Chilemba, if anything, comes out of as on a bonus. So we'll have to see. But overall, man, Sergey Kovalev and Andre Ward, that's what we want to see. Hopefully it happens soon.
And hopefully. And I think we're going to start shutting things down on that note. I'm going to go around the panel here. Ladies first. Gail, welcome to all the Community's Digital News. For folks who want to talk boxing or anything else, let the folks know where they can find you.
You can always find my column at Community's Digital News, which is COM, C-O-M-M, Digi, D-I-G-I News, comdiginews.com. I'm easy to find on Twitter and the interwebs. And if you want to get me all riled up again about Chavez Jr., like Michael's doing, I'm fine here. It's got me started again. I think I got it out of my system. I love to talk the fights. Looking forward to Golovkin, Brook. Michael and I are so like-minded. It's scary, and don't we all love boxing? That's you know, we can bitch about it, we can love it. It's all good.
Gus from Corruption in Boxing joined us live from the UK. For folks who want to talk the sweet science or want to talk music, let the folks know where they can find you.
Yeah, Mike. Pleasure as always. Mike, just one very last point I want to make. You know, last week we were talking about shocks of the year. One that slipped my mind, as you know, you normally get a lot of sort of questions, but the one for me was when Byron Rojas, he was the 25-1 underdog when he defeated Heikki Butler back in March in South Africa, for the unified WBA and IBF strawweight titles.
Good pick. I didn't even think of that. Excellent pick.
Just sort of slipped me, but see that people only on the pound for pound boxing report.
Laws for that one.
Oh,
you get full lexicon of boxing.
Come on, Gus. You just depressed me. I'm still depressed about that fight. I like Butler, man.
Nah, but the problem with Butler is he moved back down to strawweight. Well, he had that fight with the Filipino guy at junior flyweight.
Yeah, I know why he went down, but he's a really good fighter. He's like one of those fighters that you really have to dig deep in order to find the fights.
But my problem is they talk about he's the best at this and the best at that. He should have stayed at his weight and fought Nietes instead of moving back down. And that fight with Nietes could have been made, and he could have possibly got Nietes to come to South Africa for that fight. But nah, he decided to go back down to strawweight, and subsequently got upset. So
yeah,
still, that's a good choice for upset indeed.
If you look at Rojas, you know, he just got dethroned by that Thai Muay Thai unified champion, didn't it? Knockout CP Freshman.
Right. So EJ Boxing Live also joined us live from the UK. For folks who want to talk boxing or anything else, let the folks know they can hit you up.
Yeah, EJ Boxing Live on Twitter, on Instagram, and YouTube. They're making videos out there for the peoples, man. That's it, man. You can catch me, man.
And by the way, you joined us late. I don't know if you heard of Player FM that goes podcast and radio stuff out there, but you can also find the show out there, EJ, as well. So
Okay, man. Thanks for that, Mike.
Daniel Carpio, the Inscriber, for folks who want to talk boxing, the NBA. Let the folks know where they can hit you up.
All right, you can find me on Twitter at Ruckus99. Like I said, over the weekends, depends on the days, I'm here with the Joe and Francis folks at For Boxing News. Gus, the door's still wide open for you.
Pleasure, yeah, always.
Yeah, to come in and we talk, like I said, the latest things in boxing that we're obviously gonna definitely talk about the Wilder Arreola card coming up next. And yeah, I'm gonna let Francis go off on Junior so bad.
Michael Boyce, a longtime fan of the show, longtime fan of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. For folks who want to talk to Sweet Science or anything else, let the folks know where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, MikeMoney214. Once again, you can find me on Twitter, MikeMoney214. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be with you wonderful folks talking about the sport that we love, that is boxing. It's just great when people from different diasporas to just come together. I hope the world could just, we just follow our lead. We come from different backgrounds. We just come together in love, and we just talk about the sport that we love, which is boxing. So you can find me, MikeMoney214 on Twitter. I talk, music and politics, but I love boxing. So I'll just build with y'all real soon.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Jacob Rivera from Jab Hook Boxing. For folks who want to talk to Sweet Science or anything else, let the folks know where they can find you.
Yeah, I can be found on Twitter at JRATM23 and also at jabhookboxing.com. And do yourself a favor, read Gel's article. I also have a second opinion article about the Brook fight you can find at Jab Hook Boxing. So if you appreciate any feedback that anybody has, and I'm always up for healthy debates. And thanks, Michael, for having me on the show. I agree with the panel. I mean, this is everybody's very knowledgeable and respectful, and just a pleasure to be on. And also, if anybody wants to talk movies too, I'm a big movie buff. But yeah, hit me up on Twitter.
And again, for folks who want to talk boxing or anything else with me, you know what it is. Brother JR on Twitter at BrotherJR76. Again, as I said earlier in the show, if you want to find more information about the Pound for Pound Boxing Report, just go to the blog page, p4pboxingreport.wordpress.com. You look to the right of the blog page, you will find links to find all things Pound for Pound Boxing on YouTube, on G+, Facebook, where to find the Tumblr page, where to find the Pinterest board, where you can find the RSS feed if you want to check us out there, where to find us on Stitcher Radio, Flipboard, magazine, SoundCloud, iTunes, the email address, which is at p4pboxingrpt@gmail.com, and where to find us new now to Player FM, as well as Google Play Music. So, damn it, we're all over. On the next episode, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, we will do a recap of Wilder Arreola, Sammy Vasquez fighting on the undercard, do a recap also of Rigondeaux fighting James Dickens, as well as Terry Flanagan, I guess. Also, we will do a preview of. I'm looking forward to. I mentioned Jonathan Guzman last week. Is one of my prospects of the year in the sport of boxing. He has a title shot in Japan against a fighter by the name of Wake, fighting for Carl Frampton's vacant IBF junior featherweight belt, and we will do a preview of Terrence Crawford and Victor Postol in the fight. I'm saying right now, quote me on this, EJ. I would not be surprised if Postol beats Crawford. I'm saying it right now. I think Crawford is going to be in for a very tough fight.
I got Postol too.
Styles make fights.
Yeah. That could happen, but I'm leaning towards Crawford though. But I can see Postol winning that fight. That absolutely.
It's gonna be fun to preview.
And also, we're on the undercard. Oscar Valdez is going to be fighting for a vacant WBO vacant belt that was recently vacated by Lomachenko. So we will talk about those bouts. For Gail Falkenthal Communities, there's news for EJ Boxing Live, from Gus of Corruption and Boxing, for Michael Boyce, for Jacob Rivera of Jab Hook Boxing, for Daniel Carpio of The Inscriber. I am your host, Michael. This has been episode 133 of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. Everybody, you have a good evening. Good night.
Good night. Stay safe.
Good night.
Everyone.
Good night, folks.